1 Samuel chapter 17. David and Goliath. The Philistines prepared their forces for battle and gathered together at Soko, a territory of Judah. They encamped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. Saul and the Israelites also gathered and pitched camp in the valley of Elah, ready for the battle with the Philistines. The Philistines took their position on one hill, while the Israelites took theirs on another hill, with a valley separating the two forces. Then a champion named Goliath came out from the Philistine camp. He was from Gath, and his height was 6 cubits and a span. He wore a helmet of bronze and a coat covered with bronze scales. His armor weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. He had bronze greaves strapped on his legs and a bronze spear slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was the size of a weaver's rod, and its head weighed 600 shekels of iron. His shield-bearer went before him. He stood in front of the Israelite ranks and shouted, "Why have you come out in battle array? I am a Philistine, and you are Saul's men. Choose a man from among yourselves who can challenge me. If he fights better and kills me, we may be subject to you. But if I overpower him and kill him, you shall be subject to us." The Philistine added, "This is my challenge to the Israelite troops today. Give me a man who can fight with me alone." When they heard this challenge of the Philistine, Saul and his men were dejected and greatly terrified. Now David was the son of Jesse, an Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, who had 8 sons. Jesse was already old and well advanced in years during Saul's reign. 3 of his eldest sons had joined Saul in battle: Eliab the firstborn, Aminadab the second, and Shammah the third. David was Jesse's youngest, and while the 3 eldest followed Saul, he would alternate his goings and comings to the army with the care of his father's flock in Bethlehem. Every morning and again in the evening the Philistine would come out to throw his challenge. This he did for 40 days. One day Jesse told his son David, "Take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves to your brothers. Also take these 10 cheeses to the field officer. Find out how your brothers are and bring me back some token from them." David's brothers and the field officer were with Saul and the Israelites in the valley of Elah, facing the Philistines. David woke up early the next morning and entrusted the sheep to a shepherd. Taking the food along with him, he left in obedience to Jesse's command and arrived at the encampment just when the army was leaving for the battleground, shouting out their battle cry. Israel and the Philistines drew up facing one another. On seeing this, David entrusted his load to the baggage keeper and rushed to the ranks to greet his brothers. While he was talking with them, Goliath the Philistine, champion of Gath, came out from the ranks of the Philistines and shouted out the same challenge as before, this time reaching David's ears. When the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him terrified, and one of them said, "Have you seen this man who comes up challenging Israel? Whoever succeeds in killing him will be richly rewarded by the king. He will give him his daughter in marriage and set his family free from every contribution." David asked those who were around him, "What will be the reward for the person who kills this Philistine and lifts this disgrace from Israel? And who is this uncircumcised Philistine who defies the armies of the living God?" The people repeated what they had heard and said, "This will be the reward of whoever kills him." When his eldest brother Eliab saw David talking to the men, he was angry and said, "Why did you come here? With whom did you leave those few sheep in the desert? I know you are an insolent fellow. You have come only to watch the battle." David asked, "What have I done this time? I was merely asking something." Leaving his brother, David turned to another man and asked him the same question. And the people answered him the same way as before. David's remarks spread around and reached Saul, who asked for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one be discouraged on account of this Philistine, for your servant will engage him in battle." Saul told David, "You cannot go out and fight with this Philistine, for you are still young, whereas this man has been a warrior from his youth." But David said, "When I was tending my father's sheep, whenever a lion or bear came to snatch a lamb from the flock, I would run after it, kill it, and rescue the victim from its mouth. If it attacked me, I would hold it by its jaw and slay it. I have killed lions and bears and will do the same with this uncircumcised Philistine, for he has defied the armies of the living God." David continued, "The Lord who delivered me from the paws of lions and bears will deliver me from the hands of the Philistine." Saul then told David, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." Saul fitted his armor on David, put a bronze helmet on his head, clothed him with a coat of mail. David secured his sword over the armor, but could not walk because he was not used to them. So he said to Saul, "I cannot move with all these trappings on me because I am not accustomed to wearing them." So he got rid of them. Then he took his staff, picked up 5 smooth stones from the brook, and dropped them inside his shepherd's bag. He drew near to the Philistine with his sling in hand. The Philistine moved forward, closing in on David, his shield-bearer in front of him. When he saw that David was only a lad, he was of fresh complexion and handsome, he said with contempt, "Am I a dog that you should approach me with a stick?" Cursing David by his gods, he continued, "Come, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field." David answered the Philistine, "You come against me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. The Lord will deliver you this day into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. I will give your corpse and the corpses of the Philistine army today to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, and all the earth shall know that there is a God in Israel. All the people gathered here shall know that the Lord saves not by sword or spear. The battle belongs to the Lord, and he will deliver you into our hands." No sooner had the Philistine moved to attack him than David rushed to the battleground. Putting his hand into his bag, he took out a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine on the forehead. It penetrated his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone without using a sword. He rushed forward, stood over him, took the Philistine's sword, drew it out of its sheath, and slew him by cutting off his head. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they scattered in all directions. The men of Israel and Judah raised the battle cry and pursued the Philistines as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron. Wounded Philistines fell on the way from Shaaraim to Gath and Ekron. Returning from their pursuit of the Philistines, the Israelites plundered their camp. David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he kept his armor in his own tent. When Saul saw David come out to oppose the Philistine, he asked his general, "Abner, Abner, whose son is that young man?" Abner answered, "I swear, O king, I do not know." The king said, "Ask whose son that lad is." So when David returned after killing the Philistine, Abner took him to Saul. Saul asked David, who stood before him, holding the head of the Philistine, "Whose son are you, young man?" David answered, "I am the son of your servant Jesse the Bethlehemite." 1 Samuel chapter 18, David and Jonathan. When David had finished speaking with Saul, Jonathan felt a deep affection for David and began to love him as himself. Saul kept David with him from that day and did not allow him to return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made an agreement with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan, taking off the cloak he was wearing, gave it to David. He also gave him his own armor, sword, bow, and belt. Wherever Saul sent David, he was successful. For this reason, Saul put David in charge of the soldiers, a move which pleased the people and Saul's officers as well. Saul becomes jealous of David. When they arrived after David had slain the Philistine, the women came out from the cities of Israel to meet King Saul, singing and dancing with timbrels and musical instruments. They were merrily singing this song: Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Saul was very displeased with this song and said, They have given him tens of thousands to David, but to me only thousands. By now he has everything but the kingdom. From then on, Saul became very jealous of David. The following day, an evil spirit from God seized Saul, causing him to rave in his house. David then played on the lyre as he used to do when Saul had his spear in hand. Then Saul threw it at David, thinking, I will nail David to the wall. But David escaped on 2 occasions. Saul saw that the Lord was with David and had departed from him, and he was afraid. So he removed David from his presence by making him chief of 1,000 men. David went ahead of his troops and was successful each time because the Lord was with him. The more successful David was, the more afraid Saul became. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in their expeditions. Saul said to David, You know my eldest daughter Merab, I will give her to you as your wife. Be brave and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, Let the Philistines strike him instead of myself. David answered Saul, Who am I, and what is my father's family in Israel, that I should be the king's son-in-law? Yet when it was time for Merab to be married to David, she was given instead to Adriel the Meholathite. Now Saul's daughter Michal fell in love with David. When this came to Saul's knowledge, he was very pleased, for he thought, I shall promise her to him, and it will be a snare to him. The Philistines will kill him. So Saul said to David a second time, You shall now be my son-in-law. Then he commanded his servants to talk to David privately and say, The king is delighted with you, and all his servants love you. You should become the king's son-in-law. Saul's servants repeated these words to David, who replied, Do you think it is easy to become the king's son-in-law, poor and unknown as I am? When Saul's servants repeated to the king what David had said, Saul ordered them to tell David, The king wants no marriage gift other than 100 Philistine foreskins to take revenge on his enemies. For Saul wanted David to fall into the hands of the Philistines. Saul's servant told this to David, and it seemed to him that he could easily become the king's son-in-law. David and his men set out and killed 200 Philistines, and they brought the king the foreskins so that David could become the king's son-in-law. So Saul had to give his daughter Michal to David as his wife. Saul feared David, for he knew that the Lord was with him, but Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. Saul feared David more and more and was his enemy until the end. Whenever the Philistine chiefs engaged David in battle, he succeeded more than any of Saul's officers, and he earned great fame for himself. Psalm 119, verse 25 to 48. In the dust I lie prostrate, lift me up as promised by your word. When I explained my ways, you responded, Instruct me then in your precepts. Explain to me all your ordinances, and I will meditate on your wondrous deeds. My soul is weary with sorrow. Strengthen me according to your word. Keep me away from deceitful paths. Be gracious and teach me your law. I have chosen the way of truth. I have set my heart upon your laws. Since I cling to your decrees, O Lord, save me from disgrace. I will run in the way of your commands, for you have freed my heart. Explain to me, O Lord, your commandments, and I will be ever faithful to them. Give me understanding that I may keep and observe your law with all my heart. Guide me in obeying your instructions, for my pleasure lies in them. Incline my heart to follow your will and not to selfish gain. Turn my eyes away from vanities. Give me life by your word. Fulfill your promise to your servant so that others may revere you. Ward off the reproach I fear, for your law is good. Oh, how I long for your precepts. Renew my life in your righteousness. Give me your unfailing love, O Lord, your salvation as you have promised. Strengthened by my trust in your word, I can answer my enemy's reproach. Take not the word of truth from my mouth, for my hope rests on your laws. I will always keep your precepts forever and ever. I shall walk in freedom, having sought out your ordinances. I will proclaim your statutes before kings, and I will not be ashamed. I delight in your commandments, for I love them dearly. I revere your commandments, which I hold dear, and I meditate on your laws. Luke chapter 21, verse 1 to 19. The widow's gift. Jesus looked up and saw rich people putting their offering into the treasury. He also saw a poor widow dropping in 2 small coins. And he said, Truly I tell you, this poor widow put in more than all the others, for they all gave an offering from their plenty, but she out of her poverty gave everything she had to live on. Persecutions foretold. As some were talking about the temple, they remarked that it was adorned with fine stonework and rich gifts. But Jesus said to them, The days will come when there shall not be one left stone. The days will come when there shall not be one stone upon another of all that you now admire, all will be torn down. And they asked him, Master, when will this be? And what will be the sign that this is about to take place? Jesus then said, Take care not to be deceived, for many will come claiming authority from me and saying, I am he, and the time is at hand. Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and troubled times, do not be frightened, for all this must happen first, even though the end will not come so soon. Then Jesus said, Nations will fight one another and kingdom oppose kingdom. There will be great earthquakes in many places, famines and plagues. Strange and terrifying signs from heaven will be seen. Yet before all this happens, people will lay their hands on you and persecute you. You will be delivered to the synagogues and put in prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors for my sake. This will be your opportunity to bear witness. So keep this in mind. Do not worry in advance about what to answer. For I will give you words and wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents and brothers and relatives and friends, and some of you will be put to death. But even though you are hated by all for my name's sake, not a hair of your head will perish. Stand firm and you will save yourself.